Hi, my name is Rick Buttrick, and here I am today talking about my Level 1 field placement at Early Elementary in Muskegon, Michigan. The kids I worked with at Early Elementary were at varied levels with their handwriting, fine motor, and social skills. One of my kindergarten students, we'll call him Johnny, was in his first education system experience at the age of 7. I was able to actually observe him in the classroom before all my initial assessments began. And although there wasn't a specific diagnosis for Johnny, there were several client factors that can come into factor to influence his performance in occupations. Just based on the initial interview I conducted with him, I could tell that he valued his current education experience. He has a lot of knowledge, and he wants to continue learning more. He also showed interest in playing computer games at home, and Johnny's roles and occupations include being a student with education, play, social participation, and basic ADLs. Additional client factors include body functions with specific mental functions of attention, higher level cognition, and memory. Attention at his age is often interrupted by distractions in the environment. The child is working to engage their short-term, long-term, and working memory, as well as the use of their frontal lobe for judgment, concept formation, and executive functions. Sensory functions are also developing at this age as the child continues to experience new and different sensory input. They begin to develop the knowledge and ability to distinguish what is important, incoming sensory information, and block out unnecessary distractions. A limitation that is present in all children at this age is handwriting. Their muscle functions are still developing as they advance from a caveman grasp of a pencil to an appropriate tripod grip. For each of my students, I had them complete an initial writing assessment. The paper that they used was this one here, where it has every letter A through Z, and they were allowed to trace the letter first before copying it next to it on the line. I noticed that some letters were more difficult than others, but overall each child was able to complete the assessment. And in my research, I found that because the early grades are often children's first exposure to formal handwriting instruction, a deficiency in handwriting may be temporary. And at early elementary, there is not an occupational therapist within the school. This meant that there were not any short-term or long-term goals implemented for any of the students we work with. It was still our goal to improve handwriting and fine motor skills. It was up to us as OTA students to use our knowledge and resources to bring together activities and to test the students and their abilities for fine motor tasks. Some fellow classmates turned to Pinterest for ideas, and we would make some modifications to gear them more towards our students. To give them exposure to letters, numbers, and colors, I incorporated them with many of my activities. This was also beneficial for helping them to identify visually and verbally each of the elements. And I found that Play-Doh was often a very popular item to use, and they always found that to be exciting. And also a lacing task was also a big hit. But for today, my focus is with this Play-Doh. I was able to create an activity with these little black pebbles that were provided. I actually hid them inside the Play-Doh and made it the task that they had to manipulate the Play-Doh in order to find all the pieces. So the first task was opening the container, which again, that considers quite an amount of grip. Then they would take their time looking through the Play-Doh, trying to find all of the missing rocks. And as they found one, they would set it off to the side and continue to manipulate the Play-Doh until all the pieces are found. And as they went along, they made sure to clean off all the Play-Doh from the rock and continue to find all of them. And before I started, I knew that I hit a certain number, so once they reached that number, I would have them actually count out loud to me how many pebbles they had found. In this case, it's going to be 8. I got one more left. Then we have them count out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And initially I was just going to have them do that part of the task, but I also wanted them to incorporate some letters. So I'd have them mash the piece of Play-Doh and use both hands to flatten it out on the surface to kind of create a working station for them. Then with the pebbles, they would be able to form a letter. So I would show them the letter F and have them take the pebbles and place them in order to make the letter F. Like so. Now with my student Johnny that I had mentioned earlier, I don't really want to make any assumptions, but I want to note that some of his behaviors lead me to believe that he might be possibly on the autism spectrum. As part of my observation, I noticed that he sometimes has difficulty during transitions, especially from recess and coming back to the classroom. And so part of his day actually includes what they call sensory breaks, in which he leaves the room to have some alone time away from his peers and schoolwork. And these sensory breaks are actually useful during transitions to break up long stretches of focused work. They are often done for kids with sensory needs who may have ADD, ADHD, sensory processing disorder, or autism. And a break can actually help their brains rest and reset, and it is a time for them to gain the necessary input that they need in their bodies to stay alert, on task, and focused. I believe that the interventions I had with my kids could be considered a sensory break, but also still seen as a beneficial time for them to practice their fine motor skills. With my interventions, the goal was to work on these skills, but keep them fun and light so they didn't even realize the benefits that they were receiving. And overall, in my time at early elementary, I would definitely say that it was very daunting at first. It was definitely something that was very eye-opening, and it just helped me to be able to grow and take what I have learned and my experiences there and definitely be able to apply them in my future field work and as I continue in the field of occupational therapy.